everyone, and welcome back to Let's Replay Mega Man Battle Network 2. In the last part for 360 subs, I said the wrong number last time, we finished off the main campaign, and for that we now have a yellow golden star on the continue menu. And now it's time for us to start the post-game. Post-game in BN2 is a little more in-depth, but by and large shape of it's going to be the same, where we're going to be going from area to area looking for battle chips we're missing to fill out the library, on top of a few other tasks now. For instance, you may have noticed already in the LP, unlike BN1, they actively have a completely separate screen for the program advances. In order to get 100%, we also need to perform every single one of these. So, because of this, a lot of this particular video, where we're going to be getting a lot of battle chips, is going to be us jump cutting from location to location, from battle to battle, until I get the chip codes I need for certain program advances or the new battle chips, period. So, if you're following along with this, good luck, because it's going to be a lot. Starting off, though, we do want to challenge Dex, because we're actually missing Gutsman V3, and I'd rather replace Gutsman V1 in my chip folder with that until I get a new folder, probably in the next part or two. All set up and ready to go. Now, this is a lot to do, and I'll tell you now, this is an hour-long video, but the raw gameplay recording for this was closer to 9 to 10 hours. That's actually why the post-game videos are going to take a little longer to come out than the latter two-thirds of the campaign rush we did that one week, where we went from, I believe, the Shadow Man fight scenario all the way to the end of the campaign, because that means this one video had as much gameplay recording as two-thirds of the main LP. And that's a lot of editing, there's gonna be a lot of jump cutting, get ready. But also, now he's here. I'm a Numberman peddling my wares. Wanna take a peek? Numberman shop has a lot of good stuff. Cust Sword B I also recommend especially getting, because you're gonna need that for a program advance. But he's notably, I think, one of the only places in the game you can grab particularly the anti-element chips. The way anti-chips work in the game is that when opponents, be they actual players in multiplayer, net navies in-game, or viruses, use certain elements, they'll get punished with damage. They all are technically useful, but I'd say a lot of them are better suited for multiplayer than the single-player campaign, but there's a couple that are still going to be useful for either program advances, damage otherwise, or in the case of one we're going to pick up eventually, that's technically an anti-chip. Getting other battle chips. By the way, I'm running around in circles in ACDC Area 1 right now because I'm looking for Airman V3 again, because I don't think we've gotten Airman V2 from him yet. Looking for random nabby fights can be a pain, and it's honestly one of the worst grinds in the post-game. What I would recommend doing, if you have the Zenny for it, is buying Locate Enemy sub-chips, which the easiest place off the top of my head to grab one of those is the sub-chip dealer in the lobby, near where we actually got our passports in the Marine Harbor Official Center. For I think 10,000 Zenny each, because what those will do is that for a limited time, I think it's a step count, technically, you are more likely to run into the previous enemy you encountered, and using that against navies like that is very good. But I should note, Numberman's inventory actively does change up a bit throughout the game, in that he gets more and more chips the further in you are, and he's also in different places at certain points in the game. I think, like, either immediately after the Netopia stuff or during it, he's somewhere in Netopia 2. After that, he's deep in the Undernet, but from, like, basically the final scenario of the game to post-game, he's in ACDC 1, so he's very easy to access. For now, we're back at the Guardian Comp in Okuden Valley, because I want two particular battle chips that I can find here, though. This is the first of many instances in this video. I go to a place to find a battle chip, and then I'll jump cut elsewhere, because the enemy is easier to get there. The first thing I'm looking for here is actually a fishy. We already have several dash chips, but I am in particular looking for a B code for a program advance. And the other thing I'm here looking for is a spooky one, because I need an Invis 1 asterisk from them in order to do a chip trade actually in this very area. But the better place to do that isn't here in the Guardian computer. It's over on, I think, Yai's homepage, which here we are. Now, technically, every battle chip in the game has an asterisk code, but a lot of them aren't obtainable in the GBA and Virtual Console releases. Because I think the way you get a lot of the asterisk codes is by doing sort of an S+ ranking, where you get an S and then usually get a double delete in a quick time frame. But you can also get a lot of asterisk codes from chip traders. But in the Legacy Collection, I think every battle chip that has an asterisk code can be gotten from the chip traders in that, so that's a nice little bonus there if you're playing the Legacy Collection. Hey man, do you have an Invis 1 asterisk? If you do, would you swap for my Escape N? What do you say? Sure. Really? You mean it? Alright, people will envy me. Okay, here's my chip. Yes, alright. And this, I'll give this to you too, and we get an HP member, so that's a double good trade. But this now starts a bit of an interesting thing that some of the BN games have. There is an active chip trade line, where for certain codes, you can trade them to other NPCs to get other rarer codes that you can then give to someone else until it culminates in usually some larger reward. For instance, now that we have the Escape and there's a chip trade we can do here in Marine Harbor. Also, at a certain point in the game, they actually add a 10-chip trader here to Marine Harbor, and this one has a higher chance of dropping particular chips than the one over in Netopia. And I think in the post-game, they actively add one in AC/DC Station as well. Hey there, son. Have you got the Escape N battle chip? Would you trade for Hammer Z? Will you? Sure. Oh, you will? I'm so glad. This is my chip. Here you go. Now, we've already talked to the MC that wants the Hammer Z. They're all the way back in Netopia Square. So we'll be having to go there in a few moments as well. For now, though, we want to jack into this part of the center and talk to this NPC. Make sure you save first, by the way, because this is a potential game over spot, I believe. I'm the S-License Test Examiner. So you're here for the exam, are you? If you pass, I'll give you S-License. This is a survival battle test. To pass, delete 10 viruses that appear in a row. You cannot recover HP during battle, so be careful. I'll replenish your HP before and after the problem. So are you ready? In the post-game, there are exclusive license tests we're going to need to actively do stuff at the very deepest reaches of the internet, so we're going to be doing a couple of extra fights here and there. Now, he says you can't recover during battle. That is technically a misnomer. He means you can't recover between battles, but you can still use recovery chips like roll and the recover actual chips, no problem. Don't worry too much about that. Something I should recommend, though, is that when you go into this S-License test, you should bring in some sword-type chips in some form, because you're going to be fighting some shadows, and, well, they can only be damaged by sword-type chips. Though I should note, the Proto Man chips do count for that, so in the case you're running, say, like a Navi-style type folder, and you have all the Proto Man chips already, you can bring that into here, no problem. But here in post-game, you're really going to see me use the Guardian chip to full advantage, because it is very good at getting quick multi-deletes for a lot of enemies very quickly. For now, though, time for a new enemy. This is the B-Tank 3. Similarly to their cousins, they patrol their column back and forth, but will fire off a cannonball that is absurd, because the B-Tank 3's cannonball covers an entire 3x3 grid. So if you're in the center of your arena, your starting arena at least, when they use that, you're getting hit no matter what. And that makes S-ranking them with certain other viruses for battleships a little annoying down the line when we fight them later this part in their actual environment, because that means you might actively have to move and lose that potential boost to your rank points. Superb, you passed the test with flying colors, and we got the S-License. I'll give you this as a bonus too, and a Reg Up 1. Getting close to the max on that as well, which is 50 if I haven't mentioned that before. I believe I have. So this is where we're going to start actively going in on stuff, because our next destination is Koto area, so we can grab a few battleships over there, as well as finish off Quick Command. But along the way, I'm in this fight because I want to use a program advance that I haven't used yet. The way we're going to be handling program advances moving forward is I'm going to speed up the battle until I have every chip on the custom screen. In this case, we want to use cannon C, D, E, F, and G. If you have an asterisk, you can put that anywhere in that chain as long as it still follows the order. And this gives us Omega Cannon 2, which is the same as Omega Cannon 1, but stronger. You're invincible for 10 seconds, and every cannon shot you do will hit the enemy multiple times. Although, with basically every given Navi fight, it's not too useful because you will make them enter their invincibility frames at the end of a single shot. For now, though, now we're in Koto area, so now we're looking for a few enemies around here. We're looking for Quick Command V3, because we need to get Quick Command V2 and 3 on top of a litany of other chips. In particular, in this fight, I'm going for the Little Bomb from the B-Tank. Now, I already have Little Bomb as battleship, but if you're doing the program advance, which you're going to want to do if you're going for 100%, you need either its O, Q, or T code. O code's probably the easiest to get for that, though, because you can get that at high ranks pretty likely. I think when it comes to battleship drops from multiple enemies, one of the most annoying ones you can get is when you're in a battle that has two viruses that have a 50% chance of dropping a good chip from an S rank, but they also have a 50% chance of dropping high amounts of Zennies, so you're looking at a 25% chance per, and it's really unpredictable. So right there you just saw the added benefit of the Guardian chip, and it got me the Cannonball chip I was looking for, Cannonball O. So a really good thing about Guardian for multi-deletes is that yes, it targets every enemy and does 200 damage if they hit it, but that damage can not only pierce through invincibility frames in the case of Navi fights more often than not, but it can also penetrate Stone Body as a status ailment. So, Nightman, hard headline enemies, anything that takes no or 1 damage unless they're attacking, it can just pierce right through their guard and get them no problem. There's Quickman V2, and now for the real hellscape, Quickman V3. From Quickman V3 is one of the hardest chips to get in the game, because Quickman V3, the big change up that fight gets, is that now whenever he throws his quick boomerangs at you, he has a chance to just change it up, and instead of just throwing it straight at you, he'll throw it in a diagonal pattern that'll just bounce around semi-unpredictably, and at that point, it's damn near impossible to dodge, I find. Getting an S rank is a nightmare from this fight, unless you use Gator. Again, I know some people don't like using Gator a lot, but it really does help with post-game stuff. With that said, again, I am limiting myself to 1 of it in my folder, because doing the strat where you have 5 fans, 5 wins, and 5 gate man chips in your folder, and then just having that be half your folder, that's a little too much for me. Next sword I'm looking for, we actually want to come over to the mother computer, and we're looking for a Swordy 2, because I need to get a Fire Sword N chip from one of them. I already have a Water Sword N, and I have an Elect Sword Asterisk from a Mystery Data already, so we need to do that in order to get a program advance done. Now, the G-code is going to remain in my folder for a good while, but towards the end of postgame, I'm probably going to swap over to something else, probably a combo of S-code and B-code. So, while Gator's going to be here for a bit, it won't be here the entire game. It's not going to be like my main strategy for postgame, super bosses, and all that. It's just here to make getting chips easier. With that said, I do find it funny. I learned between parts, there is actually a mod for the games that removes the G-code completely from the game because it's just that game-breaking and balanced, and I think that's funny. I think it's by Prof9, who is a major person on the Megaman.exe's own scene, and is responsible for a lot of the data I use for how likely chips are. I recommend just looking up Megaman Battle Hour 2 enemies if you're playing along, because he, alongside others, compiled an entire list of every enemy, where they're most likely to be found, and percentages and all that. As well as what their drop rate percentages are, meaning it's very helpful for figuring out what you need to do to get certain codes for program advances or otherwise. So a moment ago, we used Life Sword 2, which is just Life Sword 1 but stronger. I already have Life Sword 3, so I'm not going to use it. And I'm here to buy Spreader N at Yumland Area 1 alongside Cold Punch B. Cold Punch is the same as Gut Punch, it's just that it's water elemental. Punches a square in front of you for some okay damage. I mostly need it for a program advance I actually do really like, and here it is. By using Gut Punch B, which I got a while back, Cold Punch B, and Dash B that we got a few moments ago, we get the Punch program advance. You use this and you send several gut punches across the entire row, which builds up for some pretty good damage on boss fights in particular. That's probably gonna be in my endgame folder, honestly, because I like that alongside another B-coded program advance as a combo. For now, though, our next destination is Yumland 2, because we have some Quickman to clean up on top of me using another program advance, I believe, right here. Now, I just bought Spreader N, and I already had 2 other Spreader chips, and I want to use those in a combo. I believe, in particular, I'm going to be using M, N, and O, which uses the Hyper Burst program advance. Now, this is interesting that it's a Spreader that sort of alternates which panels it's targeting. I think it does, like, center and cardinals, center and inner cardinals, and then it does that back and forth a couple of times. But if you hit an enemy in the middle of this, they can take a lot of damage very quickly, because I think it's 100 per tick. With that said, there is a stronger version of this, but I need 2 other Spreader chips, and I think I only have 1 of those right now, so that'll be there for them. Also, you might be noticing whenever I'm doing program advances so far this video, my folder looks a little different. That's because I have customized Famous's folder to essentially just be a program advance farming folder, so I don't have to put chips back and forth into my main combat folder at the moment. Like, that's full of the cannon lines right now. It's got the whole Spreader things. It's got the setups for a couple of others we don't have the full set for yet. It's just for convenience at this point. You don't need to worry about really customizing your main folder back and forth like that, in my eyes, if you have the 2 folders. For now, though, we are roaming around here in Yumland 2 to find Cutman V3, because we need 2 battle chips from him. Something I forget if I mentioned about Cutman V1 and 2 is that he does actively patrol the arena in almost the opposite directions you do, so you're very likely to be at the front the same time he is, barring when he uses his attacks. But that also makes him very predictable where he's going to go, so you can use that to good advantage with, like, bomb chips to limit where he's going. That's Cutman V3 down. Now I just need Cutman V2. Also, it's kind of interesting actually commentating over this because I'm realizing as I went through that I really did change how I handled this even. Because right now I'm cutting to when the battles show up. But eventually in this video, I actively just start cutting from battle to battle because the circling isn't needed anymore. So if you're having trouble getting V2 chips from Navi fights, my best advice is to play them like you're actively trying to get the S rank, so under 30 seconds, little to no hits. But then right before you finish them off, take a hit or two because that'll knock you down to 9 or 10 rank where V2s are much more likely. If memory serves, the actual like ranking thing is you find V2s between level 7 and 10 busting rank-wise, whereas V3 is 9 to S, so it's just a lot easier to do that. Also, there's going to be several times in this video and the rest of the game where I'm just going to, between things, go to a nearby chip trader if I'm passing one by and I have enough chips to see if I get anything I don't have from it yet. For instance, in this case, I actually do get a new battle chip. I get Curse Shield 2, which we're going to need eventually for a program advance anyway, on top of needing it for the library. But the A code is not exactly the best one for that. Like, it's the best for comboing with things, but the A code's honestly hard to get. Because I don't find Curse Shield preferable enough to actually have in a main folder. And Burner B, that's a lot better, actually. Because I like the B code a lot. For now, our next destination is actively back at the airport, because Mr. Match is here, and at this point, Heatman's been upgraded all the way to V3. So it's time for us to go get Heatman V2 and 3. In fact, that's sort of how I tried to structure the first part of this whole post-game mishmash. I'm going after net navis sort of intermittently along the way, because those are an easy 2 to 3 battle chips I don't have yet. To just make the numbers on the library screen feel a bit better, on top of the fact that navi chips are just generally good to have. On top of that, I tried to sort of just front load a lot of the chip grind in a way for a lot of stuff, just so like the next part of the post-game beyond can be very focused on like the whole new stuff in the post-game. Because that's a big way BN1 differs from BN2 here and beyond. In BN1, you can access a lot of the very end-game internet areas earlier than you're really supposed to for the story, and even go into the final boss super over-prepared. BN2, they're much smarter about limiting what you can access until post-game. So not only is there a lot to still experience and find in the post-game, but you won't necessarily be over-prepared for it. You still can be in some cases, like just spamming Gator in a lot of cases, but they're a lot smarter about it. For now, I want to come over here to the plane from the Megaman scenario because the computer in here has several battle chips I need, most of which we already have. I just need a lot of different codes. Now, something I do try to do throughout the post-game, especially in this video, and there's times where I probably don't, and I'm sorry, you know, it might be a little confusing, is whenever I head to a new area to get a battle chip, I try to, like, pause and show off the pause menu where they mark which area you're in on the bottom right. So keep an eye on that if you're confused on where I am. Like, now I'm in Air Comp 2. But it's still gonna be a little weird. So one of the chips I'm actively here for is Time Bomb 2. But I just got it, but that's not the one I want. I'm actively looking for Time Bomb 2 Z. Because of the 5 codes of the Time Bomb line, there are 3 that you can do a program advance with, and those are Z, K, and G. G is the best for that overall because, well, look at how many things we've already gotten in the G code already between Gut, Shoot, and Gator. But Z is the easiest one to get, I find, throughout the entire set. And also right there, we actually used a new program advance. That was Zeta Raton. Like with Zeta Cannon, you use 3 sequential codes of any of the Raton chips, and you get a Zeta Raton advance, where you're invincible for 5 seconds and can just spam Ratons 3 in a row as much as you want. There's Dyna Wave, which is the 3rd Shockwave chip. I loved that battle chip back in BN1, and it's still good here. Even with its lower damage, I just am not going to be using it too much because its coding isn't as good as it used to be. Because in some regards, that's how they tend to nerf some really good chips from earlier games and later ones, is that they won't necessarily just nerf the damage, they'll also make its code a little harder to work with. And I think that's actually a really smart way to do it. Because at the end of the day, I guess, I think I've talked about this a little bit throughout the LP. I didn't realize it growing up, but Battle Network really is sort of a card game. And setting up a good deck can be very hard but very rewarding. It's just that you have to work for the cards in most cases. Quake 2W, there's a chip I need for Program Advance, even though I actually end up using a different code for that. The main thing I'm now grinding for here with the Ratties is I want Raton 1 H and I, because there is an Omega Raton Advance as well that requires using all 5 in a row. I like the idea of the Omega Advances, if only because it gives an active goal for getting all of a chip line, because there's not many times they do that in the series, but at the same time, I actually don't like using them, because dedicating 1/6 of your folder to an attack that is okay at best is a little too much dedication, I find. On top of that, while I think especially Battle Hour 2 here will actively try to give you program advances pretty quickly within like 2 turns or so on most cases, having one that requires an entire custom screen's worth of chips is a little unwieldy, I find in most cases, so I don't tend to use them a lot. On the way back, though, we want to talk to this kid. He has a chip trade we can't do yet. He wants to go back home to Netopia, but he wants Shadow Man 1, 2, and 3 S for anti-damage S, and you're gonna want to do this when you get those chips. Because while that's a pretty heavy asking price, the reward is worth it. Now in Netopia, it's time for us to actively fight Proto Man V3, and there's a little more to this fight than a lot of the other V3s where like one attack gets remixed. Because while Proto Man V3 is faster, of course, it does more damage and all that, we didn't get to see a lot of Proto Man's kit to begin with, and you're probably going to in this fight no matter what, so we might as well see it at normal speed. So while he still has his wide sword counterattack, if you just let Proto Man stay still for a sec, he's going to actively get aggressive. And how he gets aggressive depends on how far into his HP he gets. He can head to your front row no matter what and do a long sword to try to hit you 2 panels in, but he can also just teleport in front of you and try to do a wide sword no matter where you are, of course. But easily the scariest attack, I think, and I think this is the one that's mainly V3 exclusive, is that he has a shockwave sword that will send a wide sword length projectile down the entire set of 2 rows he's on. I think he can only do that on the top and bottom, and he'll usually follow that up with a long sword, so you really need to make sure you're on your toes, otherwise you're probably going to take a lot of hits very quickly in this fight. Proto Man, on average, I'd say, comes down to being one of the harder net navis to fight no matter which game you're playing, to the point where arguably the second or first hardest net navi battle in the series, period, is against him, and the other one is against a certain other character we've already fought a couple times, but I'll talk more about that when I get to BN5 in that game's case. If there's any Navi you're not going to have trouble getting the V2 on versus the V3 chip, it's Proto Man, no doubt. Also, something I do like, you actually get different dialogue beating a character for the 3rd time, and just getting a, like, 9-10 rank and an S rank. And I think that's kind of neat. With that said, we do need to immediately go back in and fight him again for the V3 chip, so let's get that done and over with. So, while I do this, we are actively coming up on what I think is one of the most annoying battle chips to get in the game, because it's one of the few battles in the game that is just really hard to find. Because for one thing, the virus we're looking for is only in one formation, and areas usually have enough formations where the average chance to run into a certain battle is between like 9 and 12%. Lower ends of that usually are areas that have V3 navis, for instance. But I think this particular virus we're looking for is like a 4% chance to find, and this is where things start getting a little risky. We are looking for an octopus virus. It looks like the one we got the Aquaball chip from much earlier in the LP, the Octor. Now, we need to get an S rank on this fight, basically, to get the chip in question. And there's thankfully a pretty good way to get easy multi-deletes with this virus line that I haven't talked about so far. So the way the Octor line's attack works is they spawn a balloon with a number above it that'll then go across the field. If that hits anything, it'll detonate and hit that side of the field for that amount of damage to that element. So if that hit like the rock cube, that would deal 100 damage to my side of the field. Pretty simple. And you can strengthen it by shooting it more and more. And there are ways you can make it detonate on the enemy side, like using the Nightman chip line, placing down your own rock cubes and all that, but it's kind of iffy to use and be effective with. That chip can be rough to get. I was at that for at least 20 plus minutes. Next up, I want to go deep into the castle computer. I say that even though we're heading to like the first area, because there's a battleship I want to get over there. And this is also where I recommend you, if you haven't yet, go get the Curse Shield 1 chip from the Dominards in the castle computer. I forget which castle computer is the best for that, but I think the best place to find them overall is the television on the airplane. You're gonna want an AO or P code of that because of the program advance that you get for stacking all 3 of the curse shields on top of each other. The main thing I'm looking for here is a Spooky 3 because I need the Invis 3 battleship for the library. If you do well enough in certain fights against this, particularly in the Undernet, it's also pretty easy to get the asterisk code for that, which is pretty good. Alright, Chip Trader, what do you got for me? Gateman V2, I'll take that. Nice to have another one of those. While some of these chip traders do spawn at later points in the story, of course, I think there are times you can get Navi chips from them before you've technically fought that Navi. At least that's possible in one of the games. I forget which. Again, I've said before, but because there's 6 of these games and 4 of them have 2 versions each, sometimes it's a little easy to get confused what's where. Next up on the block for our Navi rematches is Thunderman, and getting the Thunderman V2 and V3 chip is honestly some of the hardest Navi chips to get out of the refightable at will sets. If only because as his clouds speed up on the higher ranks, it just gets to be obnoxious. On top of that, if you don't have certain ranges in your folder, you're just out of luck. Something I can recommend for this fight is actively having an area grab in your folder, even though I don't in this folder anymore. Because that at least gives you a little more time where you can actively move in rhythm with him up and down and ignore the clouds as they scroll left and right. On top of that, if you have a wood style in any case, that gives you the perfect range to hit him with your charge shot for double damage, which can be pretty good. Raoul's always kind of stuck with me, and it's mostly because I really like the episodes of the anime he was in when I was a kid. I haven't talked too much about the anime overall in this LP from memory, besides, obviously, in some cases doing voices that are based off the anime dub's voices. Look at you, Mr. Match. But I always like the Raoul episodes. I think I have some of them on DVD, because I have like 6 or 7 of the like 2 to 3, maybe 4 episodes per DVD things they put out back when. Yeah, I don't know why, they've always stuck with me. I think it's because Thunderman was one of my favorite net navis as a kid. I liked the spiky head. While we're at it here, though, in Netopia, let's go take care of the Snake Man battleships. And something that's only really just clicking with me, I think they actively make, like, a net-opt, net-at navi you can refight at any point for every single element in the game, by and large. Because Thunderman's Thunder element, obviously. Snake Man's Wood. Heat Man's Fire. Toad Man's Aqua, but also Elec, sort of, at least with his attacks. I never really thought about that they actually had one of those for every element. I guess technically they have 2 null elements as well because of Guts Man and Proto Man, and even then they technically represent different elements in a different regard from how they do balance down the line when sword and break elements are sort of their own separate thing. I lost what is pure ecstasy. You dirty boy. Ma'am? I am 12. I am calling the police. And by calling the police, I mean I'm just gonna kick your ass again and get a different battle chip this time. Thankfully, the V3 Navis, while they have a lot more HP they did back in, like, BN1, for instance, they still have enough for it's a fair fight for the battle style each time. There's only really a couple of fights in the overall series that I'd say get a little ridiculous on the HP count, and even then some of those are super post-game super bosses, so at least it makes sense why they have that much. Now that we've gotten the Snake Man battleships, though, my next destination is Netopia Square. Because there's a couple things we can pick up there, namely from the shop, but also, now that we have the Hammer Z battleship from that one trade we did about 20 minutes ago, we can now finish that trade with someone else over here in the square. First off, things I want to buy here at the net dealer, I want to pick up the Jealousy battleship. This is sort of an anti-base battleship in that it's a counter to what your opponent has, and it's more meant for multiplayer. But it can be used in certain virus fights to have a higher chance of getting their battleship. I'll talk more about its specifics when I actually use it on one in a few moments. Hey, we're friends now, right? If it's possible, I want to trade my Silverfist V for Hammer Z. Sure? And now we get Silverfist Z. This is a good place to get this battleship if you don't already have it, but it's not exactly a great coding. The main reason we get this one is for another trade just outside. We want to talk to this old lady right here. Psst, kid, you got a Silverfist V chip? My grandkid would kill for it. I propose to trade you my big bomb asterisk for it. What do you say? All right. You will? Thanks. I wasn't kidding when I said he'd kill for it. Oh yeah, here's yours. So Big Bomb is the final chip in the Little Bomb series. It's the B-Tank 3's battle chip. It is a bomb that is basically has the range of a spreader and does decent damage. I'm mostly getting it for another trade and for a program advance. So now we're back in Miss Million's PC despite me going the opposite direction because I want to fight a Shell nerd here, the second in the Shell Geek line of viruses. And I want to get a good rank because, for one thing, I don't think I have their battle chip, period. And if I do, I don't have it in the right code because for a program advance, I want each of this line's virus chips in an I code. Triple Needle sends out 3 needles that do 50 damage at a pretty slow pace. It's not exactly the best, but it's neat enough. So my next destination, now that I have those chips, is the duty-free shop here at the airport, the tax-free shop, rather. Because there's a couple of chips we haven't gotten in here. For one thing, this is the only place in the game you can encounter the level 3 of the mushy virus line, so Spice 3 can only be gotten here. But also, it's not a bad place to get the Puffballs chip, Poison Mask. And we're actually going to be going back to the mother computer to get a specific code of that in a few moments. Because the Poison Mask chip, you can get it in the S or, I forget if it's W or U code, one of those two. And for reasons, you're going to want both of those codes. And one of them is a lot harder to get than the other, so that's why we're going to be going to the mother computer. On top of that, though, Shellman is here. This is the third of the Shell Geek line, and thus it has a battleship for us that is Quad Needle. Quad Needle does pretty much what it says on the tin. 4 needles that do 50 damage, whereas the virus themselves, they just shoot out 4 needles. I forget if we've actually fought them by this point. In the case I haven't, the way the later Shell Geeks work is that they all fire an extra needle. But something that's kind of neat about the Shell Geek line, I don't think I've mentioned yet, only the last in a set of needles they fire will actively make you flinch backwards. And in that regard, taking a hit from the first one to guarantee you get a shot in might not make you lose out on too much of ranking points for your actual end rank, so that's pretty good. With that said, now we got Quad Needle I, so now that I have the 3 needle chips all in I code, I think I got the Shell Geeks particular one. I don't think I got it from a battle. I think I actually got that from, like, Famous's folder or something like that. We can now use a new program advance. By using double, triple, and quadruple needle all in a row, coded either all I or C, you get the Arrows program advance, which you pause moving for a second and you fire 10 arrows that each do 100 damage at a target. It's not too bad for dealing with navies from memory, because I don't think they actively enter their invincibility frames for most of that attack, but the C and I codes are just awkward enough to work with for my tastes that I don't tend to use them. But I've gotten some good mileage out of it, and since you can get all 3 of those chips even before post-game, it's not a bad program advance for, like, end-game main story. For now, though, we're back in the mother computer because I need to go get a specific one of the 2 Poison Mask codes. But while I'm here, we might as well use Little Bomb O, Q and T, Cross Bomb O, Q and T, and Big Bomb O, Q, T, or in this case asterisk, and get Ultra Bomb. Ultra Bomb is a gigantic explosive that hits the entire field for a flat 400, and it will also crack all panels. It's not too bad for Navi fights, honestly, because limiting where bosses can go is never a bad thing. But O, Q, and T codes are just awkward enough for me to work with. Particularly, O is probably the best out of all those. So this is the fight I'm looking for. I'm looking for a Puffball with a Spooky 2. And then I use a Jealousy to kill them instantly. So the way Jealousy works is that it deals 50 damage for every battle chip that the opponents have. So unlike a normal multiplayer battle, that would do up to 250 damage, a quarter of the multiplayer character's health at max. But since viruses can have more than that, you can easily get upwards of 200 plus damage no problem, and it's a pretty good way to get that particular code I was looking for. Also, there's this lady here. Oh, you came back. Will you give me Big Bomb asterisk? So I accidentally talked to this person between recording sessions while recording this video. She is looking for a particular battle chip here to complete a program advance for her folder. So she's looking for Big Bomb asterisk. You'll give me Big Bomb asterisk? Thank you, sweetie. As for your reward, what should it be? This ought to do. I made it for my research, though. We get her entire chip folder, and that gives us a 3rd folder slot. Now, there are some pretty good chips in here for doing program advances, like it's a free round and 2, it's 2/3 of the Arrow program advance. I mostly got this for just getting it, on top of it giving me the Magma, Lava, and Ice Line battle chips for free. Those are interesting battle chips in that they'll turn the entire row in front of you, I believe, into a specific type of panels, so like magnet panels, ice panels, or lava panels. Out of all those in particular, Ice Line's probably the most useful because that'll let you take advantage of double damage from Thunder Chips on anything. But its coding in that case is a little awkward to work with. There's probably better codings that you can get either from buying from someone or just getting from a chip trader at any point in time. Speaking of chip trader, get on one that cracks every panel, nice to have. But also, Black Hole! That is from the second of the Null virus chain. The way that works is I think it's just a stronger version of Whirlpool, so like Whirlpools will open on the enemy side of the field, and if they walk into them or get pushed into them via like using the fan or wind chips, they'll take heavy damage. Again, a little awkward to work with, but it's nice to have for free, especially considering at this point you can't fight those viruses until you're at the very deepest reaches of the Undernet, which we'll be getting to eventually, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have it early. Next up, our destination is here in Netopia 1 because we need to fight Nightman V3. And Nightman V3 is the first of a couple of navies that's a little annoying with how they like to be things. Nightman V3 is in charge of not just Nightman V2 and V3, it's in charge of a third battle chip. The third chips that some V3 navies are in charge of are a little iffy to get because while usually you're good to get them at the same ranks you get like a V2 battle chip, they require sometimes a little more specificity, in that they'll sometimes require you to be at certain HP ranges, because that's something else I don't think I've talked about. Viruses, of course, have different drop rates at different ranks, but your HP will also factor into that. Some viruses will drop certain codes, for instance, when you're at like low HP, some at high, some when you're in the middle of your HP bar. And for that, again, I really recommend looking at the Megaman.exe zones, like list of enemies, and seeing what their drops are at what HP count, so you can get a good feel for when you're gonna hit the enemy or not. Also, our soft reset there because this is me showing off that the locate enemies sub-chip will actively stick between soft and hard resets, let alone just turning the game off. So a very good way to farm out Navi chips, especially if they have more than just the standard 2, is to have a locate enemy around and then just grind and grind until you get the drops you're looking for. Also, because I haven't mentioned it yet, I actually did do some folder editing for Nightman in particular. I replaced some of the chips in my folder with the Wrecker chips I had, particularly the Asterisk one, because that's just a free 150 damage that can pierce through the stone body. There's Nightman V2. Now for the chip that's actually kind of rough to get, we're looking for the Stone Body Battle chip, which will drop from Nightman V3 anywhere between rank 7 and 10 busting rank-wise, which are the same ranks that Nightman V2 drops at, so it's sort of a 50-50. Stone Body is an interesting battle chip in that it actively gives you the same status ailment that Nightman and the Dominards have. You will only take 1 damage from any move as long as you get hit while you're not attacking. It does wear off after a while, but it is pretty useful, and honestly, E is not a bad coding to work with. So next up on the docket, we're here at Kotobuki, because I'm missing a couple of chips over here and several codes for program advances. First off, the vending machine, I'm looking for a Mega Bunny. Which is the V3 of the bunny enemy we've been seeing since AC/DC Area 2. 120 HP, decently fast, and they work the same as the other viruses in this chain. They'll move around to panels perpendicular to them a couple times until they just rush to where you are and will fire a Zap Ring down your row. And I'm looking for their Zap Ring. Zap Ring 3 is the only chip in that line I'm missing, and I only need one of them because there's no program advances that it's involved with. But now here comes the annoying part of the grind around here. Because the next chips I'm looking for are all in the Kotobuki apartment complex. Some of them in the main computer we were there for plot last time, some here in the automatic lock, and it's the automatic lock ones that are super annoying. I'm here looking for Twisty 3s for the Remobit 3 battle chip, and I'm here looking for Canodum 3s for Mega Cannons, and Ratty 2s for Raton 2s. Now, I think I already have those latter 2 battle chips in my library, but I need all 5 codes of both for program advances. And it's when you have to look for all 5 chips in the code where things do really get annoying, because that's where the specificity of the HP really comes into play, where like 2 of the lower codes and less useful codes of battle chips are at lower HPs and ranks, so I need to be at like medium HP ranks 5 through 6 kind of deal to get some of them. And it gets tedious. It really gets tedious. Like I said, this video is comprised of upwards of 10 hours of game footage, I think I spent over an hour just trying to get all these. It sucks. It just frankly completely sucks. Right there we use these Zeta Raton 2s. It's Zeta Raton, but stronger. 5 seconds invincibility as usual, oh well. Remo Bit 3, just a stronger Remo Bit. Don't really care for it, but I need to have it. From memory, it's also around here where the editing kind of changes for the rest of the video, so there's a lot more just going fight to fight. So, the auto-lock comp here is best for the Raton 2 chips. But there's actually a better place to get the Canodum 3 enemies in. In particular, and we're going to be cutting there in a few moments, the best place for that is actually the Gospel server. The area right before the end of the game, before the point of no return. More or less directly where we started this video. Because in that particular computer, there are 2 encounter formations that are just 3 Canodum 3s. One of them is them in the 2 front rows of the enemy side, one is them in the 2 back rows. After a while, though, here's Omega Raton 2. Not really worth how hard it is to get all 5 of those codes, but I have used it, so now it's in the Program Advanced library. I think it's technically the Program Advanced memo, now that I think about it. Thankfully, the Canodum 3s aren't the only enemies I'm looking for that are in the Gospel server area, so that's going to be pretty helpful, although those enemies are technically also located throughout the main apartment complex computer, because I'm also around here looking for Handy 3s and Snapper 1s. And also, in this next battle, you're going to get to see just how much you kind of have to go out of your way to get lower ranks sometimes by post-game, because you just spend some extra turns kind of lollygagging about, letting the time pass to get like a 9 to 7 rank. Sometimes just getting a 10 is actually kind of hard by post-game because you're so used to just powering through things. Alright, so we've seen snappers before. They teleport to your diagonal to try to hit you with their kunai. But thankfully, I can just kind of nullify any challenge of that by using a boosted Gutsman chip. And for that, we get the kunai battle chip. With the kunai battle chip, you do the same attack the snappers do, kunai appear in your diagonals and spin in place 3 times doing damage. And while the stronger versions do more damage, I think they also increase the range they appear out at. So you can hit enemies from the back row of the enemy side, from your front row, by using that carefully. And right there from Handy 3s, I got Time Bomb 3Z. And now that I have that, we can go do another Program Advance, and this is one that is the main reason that if you can, try to get the Time Bomb chips in G-code, because using the 3 Time Bomb battle chips in the same code in power order, you get the Time Bomb plus Program Advance, which is a little awkward to work with compared to some others, because there's a little bit of time more invested in it. But you'll place a Time Bomb on the enemy side of the field that will count down from 3, and then do a whopping 500 damage to the enemy side. Powerful, a little awkward to work with, but if you can get those G-codes, it belongs in a G-coded folder pretty easily, I'd say. On top of that, the Time Bomb battle chips do enough damage that it's still going to be worth it by the end of it. And I think in this particular fight, I'm trying to take some extra hits to get even lower on HP and get lower ranks to get another particular Mega Cannon code, in this case, I. From memory, that's 4 out of the 5, just 1 more to go. I still need a Mega Cannon G, and well, being at this HP and using Gator, there it is. So now we have all 5 Mega Cannons, which means we have 2 program advances we can do, and the slightly annoying thing is, barring getting extras, you really can't use them both in the same fight. For one, there's Zeta Cannon 3, which is using any of the 3 battle chips from that set of 5 in numerical order. In this case, we'll do EFG. Zeta Cannon 3, 80 damage per tick, you do multiple hits at once, 5 seconds invincible. Again, out of all of these Zeta and Omega program advances, the Zeta cannons I think are the best. But again, if you're going to use one of them, use the Zeta, don't go for the Omega. It ain't worth the time invested trying to get all 5 of those chips going at once. Speaking of which, let's do some more speed up and get that Omega Cannon 3 out of the way, because there's more important things to do after this. And in particular, we're now looking for another particularly rare enemy after this. We need to go to the apartment computer to find it, and I want to say you have to go to apartment complex 3, in particular, to find it. What's particularly annoying about this enemy, I think it only has one particular formation you can find it in, just like the Octor at the Goddess computer in the Netopia Castle. But instead of a 4% chance, I think this thing's like a 2.5% chance to find out of all the formations in this particular computer. You'll know you find it because it's a lava gun with a hardhead 3. Lava guns are kind of interesting in that they actively only appear in holes on the enemy side of the field. And their attack is to breathe fire, which will then sort of have a flame tower effect and follow you around the side of the field, and then they will also leave the fiery ring behind that fishy 2s do. Because they can only appear on certain panels, it's easy to predict where they're gonna be, but because of their whopping 300 HP, taking them out alongside the Hardhead 3 in a good fashion can be a little rough, barring getting certain combinations going. In this case, Guardian or Gator I would recommend overall. Thankfully, they can drop their battle chip pretty reliably. It's anywhere from rank 7 to 10, and there's even a G rank amongst it if memory serves, so if you get that, hey, it's especially good for that. What's kind of annoying, though, is that the Hardhead 3 drop is 500 Zenny, and that's all they can drop, so if you don't get a battle chip, you're just gonna have to try and find this encounter again, which can take a while. Locate enemy is very good for this in particular. Thankfully, especially if you get the G code, their battle chip rocks. Lava Dragon can only be used when you're standing behind a hole panel if memory serves, but when you use it, the Lava Dragon will pop out of that and breathe fire that hits every enemy on the screen for a whopping 200 damage base. So if you, say, use a grass line or grass stage battle chip with that while boosting its attack, you can do over 500 damage easy in one turn. It can be ridiculous. But again, trying to farm that chip out, kind of annoying. So for now, we're actively done looking around for enemies on the main internet and areas, so now it's time for us to finally access the Undernet at large. And in particular, I want to first come into here and grab myself a couple of the HP memories, and I'll be grabbing Grab Revenge later because we still don't have that. There's only one battle chip here I'm looking for in Undernet 1 though, and it's from Flappy 3's. I need the Quake 3 chip, either in its Q or W code for Program Advanced shenanigans. With that said, I have a lot easier time getting the Q code because I was here looking for that for a while, so I decided, screw it. I'll just come back to AC/DC 2 really quick and get Quake 1 Q as well, so now I can use all three of Quake 1, 2, and 3 in order. We get access to the, I think it's Heavy Stomp or Heavy Stamp Program Advance. And this one's kind of worth splashing in despite some of the awkward codings because it does a whopping 800 damage. The way it works, you home in on the nearest enemy and stomp down on them. This is actually a returning one from Battle Network 1, but I didn't show it off in either of those LPs because they don't actively mark your program advances as being completed, so that's not a completion portion. But in that, I think you had to use like Gaia 1, 2, and 3, and then Quake 3, which is super awkward to work with. Them streamlining even some of the program advances for BN2 Beyond is really nice. Ooh, an extra guard asterisk. Hello, chip trade fodder. Alright, now we're on to Undernet 2. From memory, there's not many battle chips we're looking for around here either, but the two we're looking for are kind of annoying to get because they're both from the roaming Magnet Man V3. Now, for me, this is a particularly dangerous fight no matter what because of every attack he has being Elec Elemental, but where the danger for Magnet Man V3 is with his north-south tackle he does at low HP where you get in the same row and then he tackles you with a blue clone coming from the opposite direction. At V3, he does it like 3 or 4 times in a row, and you really need to be on your feet moving quickly to avoid that. The line of magnet panels in the middle does not help with this, but something you can take advantage of is that Magnet Man himself actually has a magnet line chip or two actually prepped on him. And if you say use Gutsman to destroy a lot of the magnet panels that are here, he will use it again. But he's likely to use it in either the top or bottom row, and if there's 2 rows of magnet panels next to each other, you can just move freely between them, no problem. Up and down, even. It's just when you stand onto a standard panel when you're next to a magnet panel that you'll just get zapped into it. With that, though, we have all those, so now it's time for Undernet 3, and there's not much we're looking for here outright. What I'm mostly here for is to unlock this purple mystery data with an unlocker for another sub-memory, so now we can hold more sub-chips, and that's good because, frankly, there's several purple mystery data still missing, and I need a lot of unlockers to get them all without having to restock regularly. So my next destination is to actively head to Underkodo and get a Curse Shield 2 from a Dominard over there real quick, so I do actually put the records back into my folder for a quick moment here. But very quickly, I actively, now that I have enough money, because I jack out regularly to refill my HP here and there, I want to come back here to the Net Merchant in Undernet 1 and grab the final HP memory, and I'm realizing now that I actually edited out grabbing the Grab Revenge chip between Quake 3 attempts. I did buy that off screen, so if you have the money, go get that. The way Grab Revenge works is that it will actively deal damage, I want to say it's like 50 each, for every panel that's been stolen by the opponent. So that means you can do upwards of, I wanna say, 400 plus damage with it, but it's so situational for main story and post-game that it's mostly gonna be a multiplayer chip, I'd find. So we still have some HP memories to grab here in Underkodo, but I'm not gonna have the money for those for a little bit. At this point, I think I only have 6 HP memories left to grab. The 3 here in Underkodo and the 3 in the Undersquare. Very quickly though, I want to use my last unlocker here in Underkodo for anti-recovery, which prevents enemies from using recovery chips. So it's not a bad way to try and get like high-level invis chips from the spooky enemies, but it's a little situational again, mostly for multiplayer. Now we're back in Undernet 3, because now that we've done everything we can in Undernet 3, it's time for us to move into new areas that we haven't been to yet in the LP. Welcome to Undernet 4. This is where the areas start getting very large and complicated, even more so compared to the earlier Undernet areas, and the enemies can really start kicking your ass very quickly. For instance, now we have the returning Megalian viruses from Mega Man Battle Network 1. Megalians work a little bit like bunnies that move more randomly. They'll move all over the field a couple times and then spam their heads forward towards you to do damage. They will always attack at the same time, and their attacks to send their head at you. Which is actually a hidden blessing, because you may have noticed Megalians are covered in a shield. That is an aura. The way auras work is that they will not break unless you do the damage listed under them at once. They are stronger barriers, essentially. With that said, auras are all elemental, and they will take more, if not be completely destroyed, by the opposing element. So keep that in mind. With that said, when Megalians attack, their heads leave the aura and are susceptible to damage. So a good way to take out both at once, actually, is by using the Guardian, from your back row, and then they'll both get hit at once. So Undernet 4 is a little interesting in that it actually has a teleporter straight back to the Undersquare, which is a one-way street admittedly because of the mover panel over there. But it's a pretty good way to get a stock up on sub-chips here in the post-game. That cube there opens with the gospel code that we got several parts ago, and for it we get another bug frag. Only a couple more of those left to get before we can get the final battle chip from the bug frag trader at Kodo Square. Next up, though, we got another new enemy. This is the Brush Man. We already encountered one of the later variants of this earlier in the LP via side quest. They do the same attack. They will move randomly around the field and place a holy panel beneath them, which will protect enemies from half of the incoming damage. And now I have a big bomb. Oh, so even though I traded away the big bomb asterisk, I can still do that program advance should I need to. Brushmen are in control of a battle chip, but we'll get that in a few moments. What's dangerous about this area, though, is honestly more than anything the B-Tank 3s, because if you run into 2 of them, they will fire off so often you basically need to be moving in a circle to avoid hits regularly. You can also run into fishy 2s around here from memory, so if you're trying to get a burner battle chip, particularly the B code, I would recommend. Not a bad place to do it. And here's Megalian A's. They are the weakest of the Megalians. They are Aqua Elemental. Their aura requires 10 damage to destroy. In that regard, they're very easy to kill. The Megalians are all in charge of battle chips, but thankfully all of them are much easier to get than the respective chips were in BN1, if only because you have better ways to do more damage, but also just because Guardian does a lot in these situations. Again, Guardian can be hard to code around, but just having it in your folder for the sake of its damage is worth it alone. So earlier this part, I talked about how BN2 Beyond do better about gating more of the later parts of the Undernet and other areas until you've beaten the game, so there's still new stuff to discover and more enemies to fight in post-game, so there's more of the grind you can do there rather than trying to be over-prepared for the final boss. Undernet 4 here is one of said barriers here in BN2. There's another one in a later Undernet area, and you can still go beyond Undernet 4, but you're limited to what parts of it you can access in a way. In particular, if you go down the right fork at the start of the area and go into that teleporter, you can find the path to Undernet 5 directly. It's just near where the warp to the Undersquare is. But the interesting thing is the path to the northeast / just pure north. If you came here before beating the game, there would be a gate blocking you from accessing right there. You cannot explore this small branching path until you've beaten the game, and for good reason. Hey boy, I'm not saying this to be mean, you should leave. You're heading into the deepest part of the net. It's pretty scary, you can't even jack out in there. Only a fool would rush in where devils fear to tread. That unique-looking teleporter that we've technically seen once before leads to the post-game exclusive part of the internet. And we're not going to be heading there until next part. For now, I want to do some more chip grinding here in Undernet 4. Particularly, I want to get some of the aura chips from the Megalians around here. For beating these guys with a decent rank, we get the Aqua Aura A. Protects you against low amounts of damage, period, but it's not too powerful, it's kind of weak. There's the Holy Panel battle chip, so now you can spawn a Holy Panel to take half damage. There's certain strategies that actively use this to just tank out some fights. And now I want to try and kill the Megalian H's pretty quickly to get the Fire Aura battle chip. And there we go. And there it is. Stronger aura, but again, I don't really like most of the auras for the most part because they protect you against so little damage. And then I quickly jack out because I wanted to restock on unlockers, because Undernet 5 Beyond, there's like a purple mystery data in each one, and I'm gonna need these a lot. Attack plus 20, asterisk, pretty good right there if you still have any attack plus 10s in your folder. What do you think you are? Even gospel people don't mess around in this area. If you keep going, don't think you'll return alive. Yeah, Undernet 5 especially is kinda rough. But it does have a new enemy for us, Kill Fleurs. They're the strongest of the Killer Flower enemy type, 220 HP. Not too much different from their cousins. Spit out a seed every now and then that will land in the front row, and it will hatch into homing wood towers after a few seconds. But don't underestimate the speed of the third variant here's wood towers. They move very fast, especially if you accidentally activate them with an Aqua Elemental Blast or chip like I do every now and then. But hey, Trey Bomb 3 is pretty easy to get. Oh boy, 50,000 zenny. In the final few Undernet areas, finding green mystery data like that is decently common enough where this is the point in the game where Zenny, it still matters, but it's much easier to come by. On top of the fact you're probably getting like 600 per whenever you're not getting a battle chip in battles around now. Two new enemies. This time we got Cloudy 3s and Buffies. Cloudy 3s do the usual thing. They jump up and down and will send out a cloud that will patrol your row. And predicting them can be a little rough. Buffies, though, can be dangerous in most of the encounters around here because of the grass panels. Buffies will fire a bubble that will track onto you panel by panel, and if it hits you, or if you hit it beforehand, it will explode, dealing fire damage. Because of the grass panels, that can be extraordinarily dangerous around here, so take care of them quickly. With that said, both of these viruses have battle chips we want for the library. And what's interesting about one of them, not so much the Cloudy 3s I'm talking here, even though getting, I think it's Big Cloud, still pretty good. What's interesting is the Buffies battle chip, in that it's called Heat Spread. It is essentially the spreader variant for the Heat Shot chip line, which means it's very powerful on large. But I do want to correct something I've actually been saying. I think throughout the rest of this LP I've been saying there's a program advance tied to both Bubbler and Heat Shot. I believe I'm thinking of Battle Network 3 Beyond, where that exists. So don't worry about that at all. That is not a thing. Heat Shot in Bubbler chips can still be good, especially in certain codes, but them not having a program advance makes them a little bit worse. Also around here are Snapper 2s. They are faster, and something I don't think I've mentioned. In the case you don't have any shields for them to hide behind, the way the Snapper enemy line behaves actually changes, in that they will just move randomly about the field and will attack you at random. They will still do that every now and then, if you're not attacking them in some cases, but only when they're unshielded do they do it very regularly. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. We got a lot done today. We got somewhere about 50 chips and about half of the program advances done from memory, and even then, I'm partially blending in some of the next part in, because this chip grind continued past this, but I didn't want this to be another hour-and-a-half video. That was just for the story finale, because there was no easy way to cut that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for 370 subs. Thanks very recently for 510 plus. Again, I'm trying to catch up. The post-game will take a while to come out still, but once I finish this, we're going to move right into Battle Network 3, so we're not going to have to worry too much about catch-up after that, I hope. Have a great night, take care, and next time on Battle Network 2, the post-game grind continues as we finish off exploring most of the deepest reaches of the internet before exploring the post-game area. See you guys then.